Keep your hand on each and every tribal member within the world that needs your hand and your grace. Give each and every one traveling grace as they travel home tonight, and help each and every one of us make decisions that will be pleasant and pleasing to your eyes. In Jesus' name we pray.
Meredith Bailey. Here. Bill England.
Here.
Bill John Baker.
Here.
Jack Baker.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Bradley Cobb. Joe Crittenden.
Here.
Jody Fishingcott. Here. Janelle Fulbright. Here. Chuck Hoskin Jr.
Here.
Tina Glory Jordan. Present. Curtis Snell.
Here.
Kara Callan Watts.
Honey. We have a quorum.
And I was asked by two women. Mr. Garvin.
And Mr. John Garvin.
Don was late.
Anyone else? We have met everybody?
Did you get Tina? Yeah. Okay, first item to be discussed is discussed and possible action. Mr. Garvin or Ms. Callan Watts, this says the districting plan.
Well, probably because of my last week, we're a little bit disorganized. I guess we weren't. I thought there was going to be maps. Aha! David is here.
We have it out.
We have maps.
We now have maps.
Okay.
Okay, my question was, is this for possible action, discussion and possible action?
Discussion and possible action.
Okay. We have 40 minutes to get this done.
All right. So, Madam Chairman or Chairwoman, if you would give me just a moment, then I'll work through it really quick. So, this is David Justice with our Cherokee Nation Geodata Services or Center, and he has been very kind and gracious with his time with Mr. Garvin and I. And if you'll start at the top, Councilman Garvin and I feel that the appropriation of citizens is unequal at this time in the current system. Ideally, we were hoping for one person, one vote, one representative, which would create new districts, and actually 15 districts within the 14 counties, and then 2 at large would do whatever this body, I guess, needed it to do. But we were focused on the 14 counties and creating 15 somewhat equal districts, which was almost impossible. So we started, you can go start working down. You can see on the 3rd page, the Cherokee citizens by 14 counties, by each county, irrespective of the whole county was in the 14 county jurisdiction or not. And there's some huge discrepancies on numbers. And what you'll find is both Mays and Adair have significantly decreased in population with how we currently apportion by county or current districts, which means under the current system, should we just reapportion, both those counties would lose a seat. So we felt like our one person, one vote, one rep would be also beneficial to everybody. So the next 4th page is Cherokee citizens by 14 county jurisdiction, and that's the best estimate by Geodata Center on what they felt like that portion of the county within the 14 counties was in it. Then you start working and look down on the 5th page, there's Cherokee citizens by the 14 county and the zip code. And so if a portion of a zip code was in the 14 county jurisdiction, that zip code was included on this map and displayed, and then the corresponding Cherokee population by citizenship registration was included, so that we could start looking at how we would develop a district out of that. Well, since it's on face value, if we're looking at one person, one vote, one representative, you could no longer retain the by-county districting. So, and here's another way to look at it on page 6, is for those counties that do have 911 addressing, which allows for what they call geocoding, there is a dot representing a Cherokee. And I don't know, I think these dots would actually represent a number of Cherokees, right? It wouldn't be one Cherokee? Sometimes yes. So this kind of gives a different visual of density of citizens and where they're living.
We don't have that.
You notice Buell and I have a lot of work. So the next page, and it's the last page, is what Dawn and I felt like was the closest we could get in working together, trying to bring something to the committee for consideration. Of course, District 5, where Councilman Bill John Baker happens to live, that is one single zip code. If you'll notice at the top of the table, it says optimal number is 7,754. So if you take what we can, with the data we're provided, meaning not all counties have 911 addressing, with what we know, we took the total population for the 14 counties that live within the jurisdiction that we could figure out, and we divided it by 15, which gives us the optimal number of 7,754. Well, District 1 is its own zip code, and without confusing voters, we had to figure out a way to make it as the least confusing way for voters to associate with a district. And the only thing outside of counties that we could figure out was zip codes. So most people know their addresses. So where they physically live. And so for District 1, there's no way that we could mess with that without getting into zip codes, which would confuse people, we felt like. So the closest we could get for the district that Bill John happens to live in would be 2,159 additional on top of the optimal number of the 7,754. So if you go down, there's a varying in numbers. And I think we also tried to consider what communities felt like they had together, would feel together. And so, for example, between where I live in what is now District 11, should this proposal go forward, and then where Buell lives in District 12, we've done a lot of work in the border, what we call the border area with Collinsville and Owasso. Those are some pretty large numbers, but he and I both talked about it, and we acknowledged those citizens in that border area really associate with Tulsa County more than they do Rogers County. So even though it put him a lot larger, we went ahead and put those over with him and left them. We just gave up at a point because this is as good as it's going to get for now, and this is what we're presenting to committee for consideration. Yes, Councilman, I'm sorry, Madam Speaker. Baker.
Yeah, I'm saying that in this population that some of these zip codes are going over the line. So is that not skewing it some?
Yeah, so like for District 12, I mean, the reality is he's not over as much as those numbers indicate.
Okay.
But we didn't think it was fair to some districts who have taken on 911 addressing that we could geocode. We didn't think it was fair to treat them necessarily different than the other districts. So we treated everybody the same. That we included all of the partial zip code. So like District 3's over, which would be where Don Garvin lives. Well, that's not really as true because not all those people are going to live in his area. I mean, I have 1,521 that some of them are right over the border there in Inola. Or I guess really that's Catoosa, I apologize. That's Catoosa. If we reapportion, under the current seating, 2 people sitting on the council will be out of their areas. This was the best we could do. I mean, your area, you're right on top of each other. I have no idea what to do. We tried to skirt around and shuffle around. So there's one. So at this point with this one, there's one person that's out of a seat.
Mr. Embry?
Madam Chairman, as you recall, during the latter part of the last term, we spent a great amount of time on this issue over a course of several weeks. What I would recommend, since it's the first time that many of us, if not all of us, have seen this map itself, is that you allow the counselors to take this information, digest it, put it on the agenda for our next special rules meeting, and then that way there will be a chance for a great amount of debate on what or how to go forward with redistricting. And then I guess at this point we use the remainder of our time just to go section by section and discuss any particular changes in the election code that the councilors want to entertain.
Mr. Hoskin, did you have a comment?
Well, it was about this map, but if we're going to, which I think is a wonderful idea, take more than an hour to digest it, then I would withhold my question until we do that. So I'll defer to the chair.
Down what?
Peggy, and I'm happy to move to table for action at the next meeting, but as soon as we table it, there's no discussion. So,
Yeah, and I'm sorry.
what I guess, Chair, if you'd recommend how we could proceed, Dawn and I'd like to leave it on the table because if there's not a move to reconcile our misappropriation, because we're due one additional resource each in our districts, we'll have to take action outside of this body, and we want to make that very deliberately. We don't want to do that just because we didn't give enough time.
Okay, before we move to table, we have some people want to make comments. Mr. Hoskin, you were first, then Jody, and then Mr. Baker.
Yeah.
Is there anyone else? Hannah. Mr. Hoskin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think at a minimum, maybe we could adopt a rule, if this is procedurally appropriate, to set aside at least, over the course of the next 3 meetings, at least a half hour, at least dedicate half that meeting to a discussion of this. I think it's a very complicated topic, certainly warrants more than even 1 or 2 meetings, and maybe go beyond 3, but so as to let us do debate, but not be concerned that we're going to rush to a vote at the end of each meeting. Maybe we could, at a minimum, adopt that rule of at least the next 3 meetings, half of each meeting dedicated to debating this topic.
Thank you, Mr. Hoskin. Ms. Fishing-Hawk?
I just have a question maybe for Todd back there. What do we do when Adair County don't use 911?
Well, that's one of the issues that needs to be discussed. And everyone that was here last time knows my position on this. I believe there should be 15 districts, and we came up with a plan that passed this council and was vetoed, and we lost an override by 1 vote. We were very close last time, and I guess to repeat some of the arguments that I said at that time is that you want to be the main thing that you want to consider when you're redistricting is the voter familiarity. You want to make it as easy on the voters as possible, and through zip coding or geographical divisions, those are factors in which to consider. But what I would just want, and I'll step out of it, I'll just commend the council that, I believe there should be 15 districts, and I've been on record on that for quite some time.
Jody, does that answer your question?
No.
Well, you don't know. You have to answer your question. I don't know. You got to make sure you use the same criteria of information for all parties. Am I that expert? No. But I'm sure that at the resources of the Cherokee Nation, we can get that
We
information.
need to come up with something on that.
Yeah, sure. And here's the man. Speak of the experts.
Man, would you get up, please?
A good time.
Just a couple things I want you guys to think about as you mull this over. There are ways for us to break down are where our citizens live. One obviously is by county. Probably the most finite and equal is zip codes, and looking at that's probably the smallest block of where our inhabitants live, or our citizens live in the 14 counties. The zip code is probably the smallest, most finite area or geographic region for us to be able to allocate where our citizens live easily and equitably. For those of you that are new on the council, in the last term, we looked at a thing called proportionment, of trying to divide where citizens lived based on what geographic portion. So, for example, the area zip code that has 1,495 tribal citizens in District 14 on this map, we basically identified 20% of that zip code resided in the boundary of the Cherokee Nation. So in theory, 20% of the population would follow that. And that's an assumption you can make. It's also very difficult to try and administer, because if you do that for one, in theory you have to do it for all of them. So a zip code that goes into multiple counties, so for example 74960, which is the primary zip code for Stillwell, also bridges over into Cherokee County. So then you start this balance of trying to proportion zip codes across county lines, where primarily and historically we have followed county lines, and that's what a lot of us are used to. We have you ask a very good question on, since geocoding is not available for Adair County, and that's true in several counties. I mean, if you look at it, Delaware County, you can get it in the northern part of it, but you can't get it in the southern part of Delaware County. So just think about that as far as our lowest common denominator, or the smallest region that we can actually equitably and easily identify where our citizens live, is going to be zip codes at this point.
Any other questions, Jody? Thank you. Bill John?
I just, rather than table this, I thought we might consider discussing for 20 minutes and then tabling or something along that, and I put
That's
that
what we're
forward.
doing now.
Okay, good enough.
Ms. Lori Thornton?
Well, I guess I'm echoing Councilor Hoskins' comments that this appears to be something so drastically different than what was proposed, what we were giving out a month or maybe 2 months ago. I can't remember when we got the other little color chart. That it appears to me that we need to discuss this and fuss about this over at least several meetings. I mean, this is a big change, and our constituents haven't even had the opportunity to weigh in on this. And I've had an awful lot of comments made to me by folks here in Cherokee County. What are y'all doing with, you're not even letting the public know you're considering going to this type of districting, and we want to have some input. I really would carry Councilor Hoskins' comments a step further and say that we need to have some community meetings regarding drawing up these districting lines. And I know it's easy to do it by zip code, but my goodness, how many zip codes did I get? It looked like, I mean, you put me in every county but where I probably want to be.
Looks like you have 3.
So I would ask that we consider community meetings, we get input from the public, and then we come back and consider this again at the appropriate time after we've given the public the opportunity to make comment.
Yeah.
This is not just for us, this is also for the communities and the people that participate in our election process.
Now, let me make sure I'm clear. Are you talking about community meetings to discuss reapportionment or to discuss the whole election law?
Well, and then there is that added issue of reapportionment, and could we not do it better on our own than having to wait for the court to tell us how they want it done?
Yes, we can, in my opinion, we can, however, that's not going to stop maybe a lawsuit.
Well,
Which is
lawsuits
fine.
don't bother me.
Ms. Count Watts?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate needing longer time, and we did just get this done because there was a lot of extenuating circumstances. But I don't think 3 meetings, I think 2 would probably be better suited because we've got to take action and we need time, and I'd rather not do that in a court. I'd rather us settle it, but reapportionment is a mathematical issue, not a political issue. It's based on what we've got, period. It's not something that people can influence. It needs to be done by division. It's nothing that can be decided necessarily at a table because we can't change where people live. The other thing is we want the body to make this decision, but there's also a point where we will have to take action. So I'd like to balance that and put more time into 2 meetings because that's 2-3 months out, and we would still have to take action at full council. So that puts it at 2 meetings, would put it 3 months from here. And I think that's plenty of time to engage folks, but I understand that people would have concerns about how we change the districts. But again, it kind of goes back to, where people live is it. I don't think people get to decide where state or national districting gets placed. It's based on population, and it is what it is. So I'd hate to just think that we could change it somehow. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You want to rebut on that?
Again, I'm asking that our voters be involved in the process. And even on a national level within our country, the voters are allowed to make input. I don't think we have to be in such a hurry that we can't take several different meetings to discuss and fuss about this. I don't see what the hurry is. We've got another 3.5 years. If we took a year on this, I don't see how it would hurt us.
Mr. Embry, did you have a comment? I saw your hand slinging around back there, and then Mr. Hoskins.
I would recommend, as you know, that if we have a balancing act here. Obviously, these counselors, they deserve an answer on this. It has been debated thoroughly in the last term, knowing that you really don't care because you don't care what happened last term if you're just now on the council. What I would recommend almost sort of a compromise on that. If we took next meeting, which is February, the next meeting, which is March, and then pass whatever you pass out of the subcommittee, that goes to the full committee in April, and then whatever passes would go to full council in May. That's a 4-month process on one issue, and hopefully enough information will be gathered by the time it went to full council that obviously, and on the flip side, the most desirous thing is to do a huge survey. Well, we got to do a balancing act. But if we do that, which would get a resolution in on your issue by May, one way or the other, that still gives you 3.5 years to prosecute a lawsuit. That is food for thought.
Great compromiser. Mr. Hoskins?
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I just think we are at least as deliberate as a body as the Oklahoma State Legislature, which took an entire legislative session at least to consider redistricting. 49 other state legislatures take more than a couple of meetings to redraw their district lines. It is mathematical, but it's also other considerations, including where you draw the lines, and I think that'll be one of our biggest issues. Do we respect historical community lines? What is the acceptable deviation between the optimal number? And I do have a question for Mr. Embry in terms of congressional districts. Mr. Embry, have the courts said what is an acceptable deviation as between district as opposed to what's not an acceptable deviation?
I'm sure they have, but I can't tell you that off the top of my head.
I mean, if we found out what that was in terms of percentage, that might help us decide that, it is acceptable to have what on paper look like pretty significant differences, but in fact, the United States Congress or the courts have said, in terms of percentage, it's acceptable for one man, one vote. And I think we need a thorough discussion of sort of the legal underpinnings of one man, one vote. That's certainly going to take more than a couple meetings, I think, because we need to know what principle it is we're standing up for here and what it means. So I think getting it done until May is a good goal, but it wouldn't bother me if we took longer than that because I think it's worth it, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoskin. Mr. Anglin?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. And I definitely
Which one would you want to change?
consider the new council people that are on, but they have to realize that we did this for 3 solid years the last time and talked about it. We took it out to our communities. We had very little input from our communities. It was vetoed. And so to sit here and drag it out another 3 years, we're talking about 6 years. And this, we have to do this because of the Constitution. So we can sit here and talk about it forever between all the lawyers, but in the end, this is where we got to end up. And I think we just need to keep that in mind and quit talking about how many meetings we're going to have to discuss this and try to get it done before Don and Kara file lawsuits. So. Let somebody else file a lawsuit after this is passed, if it passes. That's all
Mr.
I have to
Baker?
say.
Jack?
Madam Chair, I think that we should discuss it for the next couple of meetings or so and not put any deadline to say we're going to cut it off in 2 to 3, but discuss and see what happens at that point. And then if we feel that we're not making progress and need to cut it off, then we can do it at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Garvin, and then
I
Mr.
wouldn't
Creighton.
want to say 2 or 3 months. I'd say discuss it until we get it finished. Might be 6 months, might be next week. We got lots of time, and I think according to Robert's Rules of Orders, we'd be out of order to set a date, because we might get through early. What would you do then? Just keep talking? This is a serious issue, and I know a lot of people want to stonewall, and I know the people from Texas, they spend a lot of time in Oklahoma figuring theirs out. I guess we could go to Texas and look at this. But anyway, to get serious, I'm stuck over with 1 vote, and most of you are sitting on 2 votes. I can see why you want to stonewall and keep your 2 votes. But the people, they're getting tired of being cheated. It's just unfair in the way it's been done. Now, if you see a zip code you'd like to move, tell me or Kara, and we'll see if we can't get it moved. But I don't know what else to say about it, but Bill's got a lot of his he wants to move, but when you move somebody's, it's going to move over on somebody else. It's not perfect. In fact, there's infinitely many ways you could do this. I guess you could work on it 10 more years and still not have it perfect. But I know Mr. Hoskin hadn't complained about his 1 vote, but Kara and I have, he may be close to his number, I don't know in his district, but doesn't it bother you that other districts have 2 votes and you just have 1, your people?
Is that a question to me, Madam
Right,
Speaker?
yeah.
My concern is that we be deliberate about this, Councilor Garvin, and I appreciate what you said about taking all the time we need. We certainly aren't going to be held hostage by any lawsuit, but at the same time, we do want to avoid lawsuits if we can work this out ourselves. I just think we need as much information as possible, and I'd like to ask Mr. Hembry to maybe get back and brief us on what I mentioned earlier, which is what is the acceptable deviation to the federal courts? Because that, I think, it's not going to dictate how we do this, but it's certainly going to inform our decision.
Thank you. Mr.
Madam
Hembry?
Chair?
No, but you want to respond to Mr. Hoskin?
Yes. Madam Chairman, what I would recommend this, and I think I've said this earlier in the process, is this is the 900-pound gorilla in the room. We take care of redistricting. All the other amendments or to the proposed amendments to the election laws fall in place real easy. And it is something that we don't want to spend the next year or two discussing, because I've been counsel for many tribal councils, and we talk and talk and talk about election revision, then it's too late to make any election revisions. So what I would recommend is this, is that this be the sole topic for the election subcommittee until it's resolved, one way or the other. And whether that takes one meeting or six, but resolve it. And then everything falls into place from there. And we are a subcommittee. There's no reason why we cannot have more than one meeting per month. But at any rate, tackle this problem first, in my opinion.
Thank you. Mr. Crittenden, and then Mr. Garland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like for us to, during these next couple of meetings, that when we discuss this or whatever, we revisit the last map that we had. My recollection is as a council, we kind of liked it last time, but it was vetoed. So I think we might be able to look at it and pick the strongest of both maps, possibly. Would that be possible?
Yeah, Shelley also has a huge binder of some of the last studies we did on the election law last term. The survey that was done. Is that in your office? So if you would like to look at that, that's available, but it's kind of thick, so it'd be hard to copy. Not hard to copy, but voluminous. Mr. Garvin, did you have another
I
comment?
just want to remind the committee that the other possibility is one district, and the other one is 5 districts. So we'll still be looking at those also.
Thank you. Tommy, did you?
Well, if I understand this right, we were only going to leave one in Adair County by this map, but what's this stepchild up here, number 13? Why can't we move some of that back down?
You can't move people.
No, but you don't have to have this district the way it is. I mean, you're only putting 3,700 people in there.
The majority of them are in Miami.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Take something out of Bill John's.
Yeah, so you take the post office boxes out of May, that'd drop it down.
And the only other comment I want to make is, I just want to make sure, Don, you and I are not now running against each other, are we?
Nope.
No.
Well, I mean, your name's up here in my little area.
Yeah, that's a misprint. It should be over on my side. I'd like to run, but we'd be in the
Well,
wrong
you can
area.
have okay and for Gibson back if you'd like them.
I would like to have them.
But I'll be glad to accept them.
Ms. Calhoun Watts, and then Mr. Crittenden.
I'd like to make a motion to table to the next meeting.
Mind if Mr. Crittenden makes a comment first before you? Thank you. Mr. Crittenden? She was going to table, but she's going to let you comment.
Oh, okay. I thought, I just wasn't listening. I heard all I heard was
I didn't
table.
realize you'd raised your hand.
But I find it kind of interesting over in Adair County. I'm either running against Jody or I'm running against Curtis. If you put me where I actually, if you put me where I actually live, if we're dividing that by that Highway 51, it's me and you, Curtis. And I guess we're the only two that's running against each other, the way this map looks.
We have to split votes.
Yeah. Or we might work on this map a little bit more, you know what I mean, before we finalize it. That's something, just a
That's
comment.
not a highway, it's a zip code.
Madam Speaker?
Yes, Ms. Calhoun Watts?
You'll need to talk to David Justice, but they geocoded your homes based on the physical address they've given. So if it's not correct, you'll need to talk to them. Make a motion to table to next meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Don't forget to recycle your can. There's a deal in the back of the coffee machine.
Some of our.